I remember celebrating my graduation with my family, and I was just sitting there like, I can't wait till I retire. And I had not even started my career. They don't realize that they already know what they want to do. They feel almost like intimidated by their own calling. I set myself a goal to coach 100 hours. By hour 70, I was like, I know how the brain works. If I couldn't mess it up, what would I love to be doing? If no one would be mad at me, what would I do? Don't look for clarity, look for aliveness.
So, Chelsea, you were in medical residency and for whatever reason realized that traditional medicine wasn't for you. How did you kind of realize that you were on the wrong path? And then how did you eventually figure out what you should be doing?
Yes. Well, because I'm very stubborn, the way I realized it was because I hit this rock bottom where I couldn't get out of bed anymore. I was literally going to take naps in the on call room when I was supposed to be in clinic, and things were just not great. So I think what I would love after people listen to this is they don't actually have to hit that point to realize that you're on the wrong path. But essentially, I hit this point of severe burnout where it just felt like my whole body was made of lead and I had to drag myself along through every day. And this is like what happened during my second year of residency, but there's all these things that were building up until then of me just having these moments where I was starting to see a different way of life that was possible. I started listening to podcasts, I think in 2016, which was my third year of med school. And that's when I first learned about digital nomads and people who could travel around the world and work remotely. I learned about life coaching, which was when I heard about it, I was like, wait, this is a thing? I didn't know you could do this because I studied psychology. That was my undergrad degree. And then I thought I wanted to do psychiatry. So I went into medicine for that, didn't end up wanting to do psychiatry. So it was like all these things were coming together that was like, oh, I kinda messed up. Like even when I the year I graduated med school, I remember celebrating my graduation with my family. I literally vividly remember we have the graduation cake and I was just sitting there like, I can't wait till I retire. And I had not even started my career. So there was all of these signs that were leading up to it. And then it really took hitting this point of rock bottom to where I realized I can't do this anymore, but it wasn't just I can't do this anymore. It's that there was something else starting to come through. Like I was just starting to feel this pull to travel, to see the world, to write. I was like to do creativity, to learn about personal growth and meditation and coaching. So yeah, it was like all of these pulls that were coming towards me, and it was like I had to spend so much time every day doing things I didn't want to do, like going to the hospital. Like you're working 80 hours a week, and I was like, all my time is spent doing things I don't want to do. I just wanna, like, learn photography and go on hikes, and so, yeah, there was just, like, this big mismatch starting to happen, and so it ultimately hit this rock bottom and was like, "Okay, no time like the present to just make my move."
Yeah. How do you think, like looking back on things that you could have gotten off that path sooner? Because the thing that I realize a lot of times it takes the being fired from their job, having a like complete burnout, breakdown, whatever it is, like to reach a really bad point, rock bottom before somebody's ready to make a change. Do you kind of have to get to that point? Or like because I find it difficult for, people that want to just continually analyze an idea and there's nothing to like move forward with. Where
Mhm.
so I don't know if in your case it kind of sounds like too is like needing something else to jump to and seeing clarity on that and listening to podcasts about being a digital nomad. Um, how could somebody, how do they evaluate of am I on the right path or not? Do I need to just persist? Like there's just this little bit that I need to push through to find fulfillment. There's so much in the situation you put
Yeah.
yourself in, and the fact of like there's such a long trajectory to be a doctor. So it's like
Yeah.
you from undergrad studied psychology, thinking that you wanted to be a psychiatrist, and so this is like a 10-year decision that you made, and then it's got to be really stressful to step off of that because like there's the sunk cost fallacy. So it's like you
Mhm.
invest so much time into something and you're like, well, I put 7 years into it. I have to finish.
Yeah, so I'll answer that question of, like, essentially, it's how do you know you just need to, like, get through the rough patch and it'll be worth it once you're done? Because I think that's a big question, and it's something to ask yourself. I think it's a good point of reflection, right? One of the problems in the medical training world is that's what you're told the entire time, and I think probably many jobs, many career paths, you're kind of fed this line of, "Oh, just hang on, it'll get better when this happens." And so it's like I kinda had been telling myself that, and I had been told that for years at this point. It'll be better once you pass your board exams. It'll be better once you get into the hospital and you're doing your clinic. It'll be better. So it's like that's been fed for a while. So there's a lot of delayed gratification happening. And what I started to realize is, okay, it'll be better when this happens. So I started to look at people like the furthest along, right? Like I started to look at my attendings, the people who are living the better when life. And what I noticed is, one, they were the happiest when they left the hospital. That was when their eyes lit up and they were so happy to leave. 2, they had bags under their eyes and just, like, didn't look well. I was doing OBGYN residency, so people are not well. People are on call for long periods of time. And then just in general, I didn't want their life. And so those 3 pieces together, it was just clear that, like, maybe it'll be better, but it's not what I want.
Yeah, because I think that happened when I worked in finance in New York too. Is like the first job was like 80, 100-hour weeks. I mean, I spent 36 hours straight at the office one time. And so that job I didn't like so much. But then when I transitioned to actually like this investment firm, at least I could see there, like it was the job was the hours were quite a bit better, not quite as much like super late nights or whatever. But yeah, at that point I could see that my boss's jobs are pretty good. You know, they spent time with their family. They didn't have as many like canceled weddings and canceled other things that happened. And so I think that's kind of a good barometer to look at, like the people that are 2, 5, 10, 20 years ahead of you is like, what is their life like? Is that something that I aspire to be? And yeah, there's gonna be some really tough things in anything. I'm sure we'll get more into the business that you have now. And there are a lot of things where, you know, you probably second guessed yourself and had to put in a lot of hard times, long hours, and eventually get to a point that it works. But I think it's a little bit different when yeah, when you see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll say about just, like, how do you know if it's the right path? Because it is true. Every single career you have, every life path you take has really hard parts. Like Mark Manson talks about this, like everything sucks some of the time. You just have to choose the suck that you're willing to tolerate. And it's like he talks about like what's the shit sandwich you want to eat every day. And so that's there. And so it's important to be like, "Oh, but I'm having a hard time." That doesn't mean you just jump ship, but you want to think of like what is it in service of? Like why are you eating the shit sandwich every day? And is that reason important to you? And so if I went really deep on what am I here for? Like, what was my reason for going into medicine in the first place? Why did I want to be a doctor? I came up really shallow because the reasons were superficial. Like, I couldn't connect to a deep, deep reason because there wasn't one. Because the reason I chose to go into medicine was like, it's impressive to other people. Like, I was smart and I could, and the status. So they're just my roots and like my why wasn't deep enough for me to kind of persevere when it was difficult.
Yeah, so do you think a lot of that was like, obviously, you're making that decision probably like 18, 19 when you're deciding of undergrad,
Mhm.
and then it's just like the continually next steps, and so do you think, you know, a lot of that rationale was kind of conversations with friends, family, guidance counselors, those types of things where I think maybe the work that you're doing now or the transition that you made, it was more, you know, at an age and maturity of kind of having a much deeper understanding of what's important to you and how do you
Mhm.
want to contribute in the world and how do you want to live your life? And so
Yeah.
how can you separate those things out?
Yeah, I love that you said guidance counselor because I have this thing I talk about with my clients of like the guidance counselor approach to careers, which is it's based on the superficial things, right? It's like, "Oh, you're good at science. You like to help people. You're kind. Doctor." Like it's there's these very small boxes that you're checking and then there's a very few like there's a small array of options that you look at and you're just kind of trying to funnel people into different paths. And so I think that's what it was. It's like I loved psychology. I remember at one point I knew I loved psychology. That was my through line. And then I would tell people, okay, I love psychology. I'm either going to get my PhD and do psychotherapy, or I'm going to get my MD and become a psychiatrist. And I would just notice people's reactions, and they'd be like, "Oh, you might go to med school. Oh, you must be smart." And it's like I'm so young at the time. Of course, I want validation and approval from the adults around me who, that was like a drug to me. And so, yeah, it just makes sense that I sort of chose it because that's where I was given the most validation.
I went to the Tony Robbins event in Germany a couple of months ago, like on Unleash the Power Within, and
Mhm.
one of the things that was really interesting was, there's like 6 human needs, and so it's like
Mhm.
it's certainty, uncertainty, significance, love, growth, and contribution, and I think especially in today's age of the significance piece of it. So, I want people to see me on Instagram, or I like how people look at me when I say this, or I want my significant other to act of a certain way towards me, and yeah, when you have some time to kind of think through stuff, and it was super interesting during the event because most people were basically, I want certainty and I want significance were like the top things. But then
Mhm.
after kind of going through some exercises, people really realized that like if you want those things, you're basically setting your life up to be unhappy because there's going to be times when you're not significant. There's going to be time when you fail. There's going to be times when there is uncertainty, you get fired, and you really kind of crumble in those moments if those are the things that it built on. But if you have the attitude of say love and contribution,
Mhm.
and it was interesting how going through this, basically that's a big shift that almost everybody realized that they needed to make. But if you're like, I want to get paid every month or every 2 weeks or whatever it is, and I want people to look at me and think that I'm very important, but there's a lot of things where is that the highest self that you can have? Is that the best way to
Mhm.
contribute? And
Yeah.
so yeah, that exercise I think was really important, and I think it's things that you're
Mhm.
kind of realizing, and a guidance counselor, like I think almost with anything there's like where do you get the like I always so there's a book I remember when I was like college, high school is like the what color is your parachute? I think there's like
Mhm.
50 versions of like here's how to figure out what to do with your life. But I don't know that the guidance counselors or a lot of the parental advice or whoever knows all the opportunities like how you could build a career in 2025, 2026. And
Mhm.
and so to have, you know, like how do you discover what you could potentially do and all the options out there versus taking the path that maybe isn't going to exist anymore because of AI or because of other changes that are happening right now.
Yeah, I think because I hosted a virtual summit over the summer called Pivot Potentials, and it was kind of answering those questions too. It was just like reimagining career. That's what I called it, a career reimagining summit, because there's a lot of ways that we view careers that's like, okay, you have this degree, and so it unlocks these doors. And then these doors give you this experience, which then gives you, and it's like this very linear progression. Whereas maybe that was true like in the 80s or 90s, but things have really changed in the career market in general. Like there's been a down credentialing, is what they call it, where like big companies like Google and other tech companies, they're not even requiring that you have a bachelor's like just to get a foot in the door. There was a period of time where it's like to get an interview anywhere that was maybe like a more intellectual or creative job or a professional kind of job, you needed a bachelor's degree or they wouldn't even look at your resume. There was like filters to take that away. And that's been slowly starting to go away, where it's not that they don't want you to have degrees, but it's not something that's going to keep you out of opportunities. And so they're moving more towards skills-based hiring, where it's like, can they do this job? Do they have this skill set? And so that obviously things happen faster in tech and they're kind of faster to adapt those things. So it's not everywhere that that's happening, but that's the general move. And then there's just so many ways, like because of the internet, like, and you've seen this, there's the creator economy has exploded. So like previously we've been in a more professional economy and now we're moving into a more creator economy. And so there's just this like decentralization of how to earn money. So like there's just a lot more opportunities and ways for you to like even just like with gig economy, like people can like get on Uber or TaskRabbit and they can kind of source their own income in that way. And so all of that to say things have shifted very dramatically in the past like 10, 20 years. And so the guided counselor model just doesn't hold. And so I think just starting to realize that there's so many more opportunities out there, that's one of the first steps is like, oh, it's different now. Like that's actually not valid anymore. Like there's so many ways that I can move and swerve and change during the course of my career.
And then how does somebody like if you tell me more about the summit that you hosted, for example, like how does
Mhm.
somebody evaluate, what the opportunities are for them and how to get started with it, how to Um, you know, does it involve like should they save up a year's worth of money and then quit their day job and, spend a year traveling Africa? Or kind of what's your recommendation for somebody to go from something that's more traditional in medicine or in law in whatever the job happens to be? Like how could they go about evaluating something? And obviously
Mhm.
they spent 5, 10, 20 years doing something, like feel comfortable making, such a big life decision.
Yeah, I love this. And I don't think it's like you don't need to quit your job or do anything dramatic just to start exploring. I think that's the fun thing is you can just start opening your mind up to opportunities. And so what I did like back when I was sort of coaching myself through my own career transition is I just started like before going to outside influences, you want to go inwards first because there's a lot of ways you can get like caught up in going on Google or like going to ChatGPT. And what I really recommend for my people is like go in first and you want to get clear, as clear as you can. There's no perfect like answer here, but just like as clear as you can on like what are you good at? What do you really love doing? What what do people come to you for? When are you at your best? Like what activities are you doing when you're at your best? And then what are your values? Like what's important to you when it comes to your career and how your career intersects with your life? Because we can talk about career specifically, but it's also like how your career allows you to live different parts of your life. And so you want to look at what's most important to you. And values really form what I call like the structure or the context of your career. Meaning, if you value growth and freedom as your highest values, entrepreneurship is probably for you. If you value security and collaboration, but maybe like innovation, maybe you want to work at a startup. So there's like ways that your values can influence the structure of your life. Or if like flexibility is a huge value, maybe you want to work remotely. And so values are a really important place to start just to give yourself some general categories because with the values, you can categorically eliminate certain things. And then you just have a better sense of am I looking for online work? Am I looking for in person? Am I looking to join a business or start my own business or that kind of thing? Is do I need to be talking to people? Is connection important or is deep work more important? And you can have both, but it's just really tuning into like how do you want to be spending your time? What kind of things are you really good at? And then another one I like to do with my clients is like just what do you care about? But along with that, we feel like we have to care about so many things and that like we're a bad person if we don't care about certain things. And so I also ask them like, what do you not give two shits about? Like, what are you done caring about and done pretending that you care about? And that's also really telling because it lets you know, like, yeah, that's not for you. Because I've had clients who were like, I don't care about academia and research and like getting promoted. And it's like, okay, clear. Now we know you don't want to climb the research ladder. You don't care about the grants. You don't care about the prestige of that. So yeah, those are some of the questions that you can start with. But the inner journey, just like the inner contemplation, is gonna give you your best starting point to then kind of match some of those things to the outer places.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your journey. I mean, we hinted out about it earlier, but so were in residency and then kind of, you know, reach rock bottom, and then how was that transition to where you are now? Just to give someone an idea of,
Mhm.
feeling stuck now, like what was your process? And I think with anybody and somebody who coaches clients is like you realize all the things that you did wrong or that could have been done quicker, easier, whatever it happens to be. And then like here, do as I say, not as I do, because like I clearly didn't do it right. But let's
Yeah, no, I
start with
love
with
that.
with your journey first, and then we can talk about the recommendations for others.
Yeah, I love that because what I tell my clients is like, I learn things the hard way so you don't have to, because that's how I learn. I just like go in and I learn things the
Yeah.
hard way. Um, Yeah. So what I did is let's see, it was like November of my residency and the years start in July. And I was
Mhm.
like, I can't stay any longer. So I turned in my resignation and the goal was I'm gonna travel, but you're in residency and you don't make money in residency and you're also like very in debt. So I was like, I don't have like savings to go travel with. Like that's a cute idea, but absolutely not. I have the opposite of savings. So I was like, I need a way to make money while I travel. What skill sets do I have? Delivering babies? Like, do we do that remotely? Like, is that a thing? Like, I don't
A little
know.
difficult.
So so it turns out that, like, one of the skill sets I have is speaking English as a native speaker. And so I learned about
Yeah.
teaching English as a foreign language. I got my TEFL certificate, and I got a job teaching English in South Korea. And so this was what I call, like, my bridge job, which I tell people you don't have to quit your job to start the exploring process. That's not really the case in residency because you kind of do need to quit because otherwise you're you're learning surgical skills and things that like you're not in residency to just hang out until something better comes along. It's a very rigorous training path. So you need to get out of that. So I did
Well,
need
and
to get
also
out.
the
Mhm.
numbers of hours a
Mhm.
week too. So it's not a typical 9 to 5 where you're like, okay, the 5 to 8 or, a couple
Mhm.
hours in the morning that you can put into something. It's probably
Mhm.
pretty tough to grab, 5 to 10 hours a week to figure
Yeah.
yourself out and then also to start the new thing. So that's
Yeah.
probably another factor of it too. It's just there's
Very
no free
much.
time.
There's no capacity really. And so that is like,
Yeah.
if you don't have capacity, like if you're working finance like you were and you're having these really heavy weeks, then maybe you do want to take a bit of a sabbatical or sometimes you can take just like breaks and you're not fully quitting, but you just, have a leave or something. So if you don't have capacity, like you said, I think like 10 hours a week is a nice amount of time to dedicate to your soul searching process. If you don't have that, then it is possible that you need to find what I call a career bridge, which is a way to support yourself financially, take care of your needs while still having time and space to kind of figure out what you want. Or once you figured out what you want, to then start pursuing it if it's something you need to like build. So that's what I did is I got a job teaching English in South Korea and mind you, I am from Alabama. I had not traveled. Like this was kind of a wild thing to do if I'm looking back that the last time I had been out of the country at that point was like 7 or 8 years ago when I did like a service trip to Nicaragua for like an alternative spring break. Last time I was out of the country. Had not really traveled outside of the country that much. And so what I did was I sold all my stuff and I bought a one-way ticket to South Korea and I got a job there for a year teaching English. And then in my nights and weekends, I was just figuring out how to build a business. Figuring out like what I wanted to do, how I wanted to do it. I was just listening to podcasts to and from work and just putting my all into figuring out what was next and how can I make money online.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I think, yeah, there's a few things there of yeah, what how can I pay rent, pay this, like all the living expenses, and two, I mean, I think depending on where somebody is, if like they're in a super expensive city, it's like how do I get out of my lead? Like it's probably not the best place to be in New York City, let's say, and then how do I explore ways to make money and and have this huge just monthly burden of expenses versus I think that is one of the things that can be helpful in terms of, getting out of wherever you happen to be living. And so like a lot of the digital nomad places you'll see people go to are fairly low cost. So it's like Banks of Bulgaria in the summer or going to Bali or
Mhm.
Thailand or Vietnam or somewhere like
Mhm.
that. I think also it's like if you can find some remote way to make a little bit of money and then you're like, how can I have as little expenses as possible? And then
Mhm.
having obviously the flexibility to in terms of like having free time. And I imagine teaching English too wasn't the same amount of work as residency. So you did have quite a bit of free time
Mhm.
to, bills kind of somewhat paid, and then a lot of time to explore and figure out how to build a business that was um, much more um, in your wheelhouse of interest than teaching English being kind of that
Yeah.
um, stopgap or transition. And then so, if we go forward from the time in South Korea, how did you go from there to the business that you have now?
Yeah, so pretty soon after my initial thought for my business was I was gonna be a travel blogger. And so if you can imagine, I'm working in the hospital and I tell everyone, "Hey guys, I'm quitting and I'm gonna be a travel blogger." And I like with a straight face, I told them this. And people were like, "Are you joking?" And I was so serious. This was in 2019. It was starting to be a thing at that point, but yeah, so I bought my domain
Okay.
name and it was the turquoisetraveler.com. And that's what I started doing.
Okay.
So that was the beginning of it, but pretty soon after I started I so this is actually one thing we were gonna talk about taking action. So I obviously had no clue if that's exactly what I was gonna do, but I was like, this was my directional clarity, right? This is what I know right now is something with writing, something with traveling, something that can earn money online. So I kinda just put the puzzle pieces. I was like, "Hey, this might be it. I think I'll like travel blogging." I bought Nomadic Matt's blogging course, and I just started my blog. And I committed to writing one blog post every single week for an entire year. And pretty quickly, I realized I love writing and I love traveling, but I do not like writing about travel. And so, and I didn't really like the monetization strategies in travel blogging. Like, there's just a lot of techie back end, like SEO and affiliates, and put the link here and maximize that. I just didn't really like that. And so I was also starting to explore the world of coaching because I had heard about coaching maybe like a year and a half ago, and I read a lot of personal growth books. And so I just kind of started exploring that as a world. And I signed up for a coaching certification program. This is all while I'm in South Korea. And I loved it. Like from the moment I started coaching people and just started learning about everything, I loved it. So while I was in South Korea, I was taking my coaching certification and I'm not casual. Like you said, I was going from 80 hours a week to like a 9 to 5. So I was like, this is a part-time job. Like, what am I gonna do? So I was like, how about I set myself a goal to coach 100 hours while I'm here in South Korea? Do like 100 hours of practice coaching. And so there was a lot of other English teachers I was on Jeju Island in South Korea. There's a lot of other English teachers. So I just would coach every single English teacher on the island. It was probably a very strange time to be teaching in South Korea because there was a girl, like I would just set up at a cafe and then anyone who wanted to come after school, they could get coached. And so through that process, I started developing like what I loved talking about. Oh, I don't like talking about relationships. I'm kind of bored by that topic with people, but I love when they're talking about purpose and overcoming fear and what they really want to do. And so I started learning kind of where I thrive, what tools I really like to use. By hour 70, I was like, I know how the brain works. Like I know how the brain works. And so that's really what like catapulted me into coaching because yeah, like travel blogging was starting to not be as interesting, and then coaching was taking my attention. So, like from that point, I just decided to start coaching. Purpose was the first thing I was really captivated by and started helping people with. And then I just kind of followed the flow of what people were asking me for, what topics were interesting to me, and kind of evolving through my years of coaching, like from that.
No, it's really interesting. I think you were talking about maybe it was even yesterday or this morning for you, but about perfectionism and just seeing your journey of just telling people I'm quitting medicine and I'm going to be a travel blogger. Um, and just so many people that I talk to that have some idea, I wanna start a business, but I have 15 ideas or, I'm gonna buy one more course or, someone who, wants everything to be perfectly lined up to then be able to make a change when, I think for so many people's journeys, it's definitely, nowhere near what their initial plan is, and the quicker you can test things out. I think it was who was it?
Mhm.
Vanessa Lau, this has a large audience
Mm.
online, and she had the idea, it was like, "I'm gonna be a makeup vlogger," or like, "I'm gonna create makeup content," and then but it, like, took her 5 years to start doing that, and then realized to put on and take off makeup all the time is like, "No, not doing that." And then finally found something that sh and I think even from what she was doing a few years ago to today is probably different,
Mhm.
and so it's one of those things that's like you kind of need to be in the arena doing something, taking action, and before you're really able to figure that out. Or I was talking to a friend of mine about her podcast she wants to start, and she's kind of going back of like how to be different in the niche that she wants to start in. I was like, you can figure that out at episode 25 of your podcast. Like it'll come, but by having conversations, realizing what resonates, the same thing that you were talking about, even when you went from the okay, no more travel content to coaching to yeah, no, I don't want to deal with relationships. But how are you like you liked psychology, so like that would maybe seem like from the previous you would have thought that that would have been the area that you should be doing coaching in. And so it's interesting to hear you talk about your, meandering in a way journey
Mhm,
to
mhm.
find where you are now. But I think it's something that probably most people need to go through. Even for startup founders too, it's like the amount of times that people fail. And so it's like their first, second, third startup, complete disasters, and then all of a sudden they hit it big. But it's a similar journey for those types of things too. It's you kind of have to get the experience and reps in and figure out what you like and don't like, and eventually, you need one of those stupid ideas to start working, and then you're like, okay, I can live from this for a while.
Yeah, I think I love all of those, like, comments that you made because I think people are so afraid of it's like getting it wrong, wasting time, being seen not polished and flawless. There's just a lot of fear around all of it. It's like not wanting to be seen in process of figuring it out. And there's an interesting because of my psychology major, I always like love going and looking at different studies that they've done. So there's a study where there's a photography class and they split them into two groups. And like one half of the group was meant to they're like, your goal for the semester is you're going to submit one perfect photo. You're going to give us the most perfect photo you can have, and you just submit one, and you're graded based on quality. And then the other half of the group, they're like, your job is just to submit 50 photos. And it doesn't matter how good they are. We're not grading on quality. We're just checking that they're done. We're just grading on quantity and just that you've done it. And so when they submitted all of the photos, like both of the different groups submitted the photos at the end, what they found is the group with the highest quality photos was the group that was not being judged on quality. It was the group that was supposed to just submit 50 any photos. But it's because they were snapping, taking action, just getting shots, not overthinking it, that they, like you said, get the reps in. They started to find the angles and actually get things right. Whereas the group that was meant to submit just the one perfect photo, like their photos were trash because they just didn't take a bunch of photos, they just did one, and they were, like, overthinking it and trying to get it exactly right, and so it's getting the reps, it's not being afraid to get it wrong, it's just taking the risks and realizing also that we act like there's an option to not take a risk. We're like, "Oh, I just don't wanna take risks," but, like, by not doing something, you're taking such a risk because regret is the only emotion you cannot process. Because it's based on the past. Like, you can't process it. It just hangs out there. So, it's an interesting frame that we have that, like that putting something out there is somehow a bigger risk than not putting it out there.
Yeah, I'm having a lot of conversations, like, with, David Kadabi, one of the authors that I had on for one of the early episodes, was talking about, quality versus quantity, and in so many ways, it's the quantity piece of it. So, there's, like, pottery classes that have done this, there's a bunch of, like, studies that have taken a look at that,
Mhm.
or, his example was, Mozart and Shakespeare. He's like, they create a lot of stuff and a lot of it's garbage, but then you have Hamlet and all of these other great works, but you kind of have to put pen to paper if you're gonna ever be a good writer. If you're gonna do coaching, you have to take a bunch of coaching calls. If you want to speak Spanish, like you have to sound like an idiot like multiple times. And that's unfortunately the only way that I think to move forward. So the perfectionism I think gets in the way a lot.
Yeah, you have
And
to
so
be
how do
willing
you
to just look like an idiot. I think that's the best way to say it. It's just, like, not be afraid to just look like a fool.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so you do some coaching work with people on how to get out of maybe like do you work a lot with people who are in medicine, or is it very broad, or what are the type of clients that you work with, and maybe tell a little bit about some of the transitions that you help people make.
Yeah, so initially I started out kind of just, "Hey, anyone and everyone, I'll help you find your purpose." And then COVID hit, and people from the hospital were really burnt out. There was a lot of like, I had a lot of friends who still worked in medicine on my Facebook, and I'm in Vietnam going to rooftop parties and, like, posting pictures, and so people kind of from my past are like, "What are you doing? How did you get out of the hospital?" So, I started kind of moving into healthcare professionals because it was, like, in the wake of COVID, and I was like, "Oh, I think they need help." Like, there's a lot of burnout. People are not well. So, I started doing almost like burnout coaching for healthcare professionals, and then that moved into, "Well, why are you burnt out?" Many different reasons, but a lot of people, there's like some misalignment in their career. And so then we started working on like career alignment and how to, get them on track for what they really want, not just, choosing from the guidance counselor buffet of options. And that evolved into a lot of my clients also wanted to start businesses. So there's like I've just been kind of evolving as my clients have evolved. And so what I'm working on now, and I just launched the new podcast today. I just changed the name and the artwork literally today. And it's the 100K Healer. And the idea is helping clinicians escape the broken medical system to build something of their own, like to build their own healing business, so that they can help people, like make the impact they really want to make, and also have freedom.
Okay. And so what type of businesses are clinicians starting? Like, give me some examples of like what somebody was doing and working in a hospital, and what are they able to do on their own?
Yeah, so it's fun because some people are really taking their medical training and expertise and just doing it sort of without insurance and finding their own little niche. Like I had a client she was a family medicine doctor, and she had her own personal journey and story with like endometriosis, and the way she did certain natural things to help her heal from that. And so she's now just coaching people with endometriosis to help them reduce pain. So that's one thing where it can be very medically adjacent. But then I have another client who she was an orthopedic surgeon, but she also had this like on the side, she's likes fencing and medieval history, and she kinda has all these quirky things she likes, and she ended up creating a fitness coaching for fencers company and was able to quit her orthopedic surgeon job to take that thing full time, and even was in talks with getting contracts with, like, the Olympic fencing team to help train them. So it's like she's kind of using her orthopedic surgeon knowledge in a way because she's very knowledgeable about the anatomy and the body, and she can help people fence without injury. But then it's like fitness coaching is totally different and for fencers. So yeah, it's like really I what I love most is I never really know what's going to come through for my clients about what the thing is they're going to do. And so I just get to help them connect to cuz one client I worked with like it totally came out of nowhere. She's like, "I want to be a voice actress." And she was doing, like, pediatric nephrology or something, so, so sometimes it's related and sometimes it's like, actually it's this, and it's something totally different, and a lot of times what I'm doing now is more helping people do, like, healing businesses, right? So there's some sort of healing, whether that's somatic and, like, more trauma healing that they're moving into. I have a lot of clients who are interested in, like, psychedelic and ketamine type things that they really like the healing that's possible with that, and then some clients are doing like more lifestyle medicine and just like holistic kind of practices. So it's all over the place, and that's the fun part for me.
Oh, that's amazing. And yeah, I'm trying to think because the health space is really interesting because I mean I
Mhm.
think for me it obviously if I get in a car accident or something of like go to the hospital, but I mean most of the health things that I'm thinking about are like how to have more energy, how to feel better, how to
Mhm.
how to fix my posture from being on my phone way too much, all those different things that are not necessarily like that I go to my primary care physician and there's a specialist for that. And so it's like something I'm going to pay for kind of out of pocket anyways. And so I think, there's so many things of yeah, of somebody either seeing something outside of medicine as the opportunity. And then also I think there's this push for the consumer to maybe do, especially with AI now, of like, what should I have done or what's this problem? And then, finding a specialist on whatever the thing happens to be. Um, but I think it's a really interesting time
Mhm.
to have someone, yeah, explore what other ideas are out there,
Yeah.
in that
Yeah,
space.
because in medical school, we don't learn anything about the well body. We're only studying pathology. You're only studying like when things go wrong and how to kind of return it to a baseline functioning. But we're not studying like wellness and longevity and like optimization for different things. That's not at all part of the curriculum. And so one of my clients said, she's like, it's not a healthcare system, it's a sick care system. And it's really just taking care of people. And it's, there's parts of it that are necessary. I'm not saying we don't need it, but I think a lot of the people who I work with who went into medicine, they went into it because they really wanted to help people be well, and it doesn't feel like that's what they get to do on a day-to-day basis in the current system. And so they're really just craving the ability, like you said, to help people like have more energy, to make lifestyle modifications, and to kind of return to their natural state of wellness.
Yeah, and probably psychology as well, of a lot of
Mhm,
psychology is really from, like, doing poorly to doing okay, and I think that there's a
mhm,
lot of people that also, like, I'm doing okay, there's nothing that's awful right now, but, like, how do I actually, build my dream life? How do I be feeling phenomenally? And so, yeah, I think some of those things are missing from, the mental as well as the physical in terms of health.
yeah.
Um, and so what's the process to go through in terms of either somebody, works in health or works in something completely different of, you know, do they always come to you by the time they come to you, they already kind of have an idea of something that they want to do? Or what's the exploration phase and then the kind of get over perfectionism and start doing something
Mhm.
phase?
Yeah, the funny thing is when they come to me, they don't realize that they already know what they wanna do, but they do
Okay.
know. Because, like, they're overthinking it, and they're usually just like, they're kind of wanting someone else to validate things, or they feel almost, like, intimidated by their own calling, where, like, there's something on their heart that's been nagging at them and it keeps coming back, but they're like, "No, but it can't be that." But, like, I can't be the person to do that. Like, I had a client recently who, because and now I have this, one-off session that you can do with me that I'm calling Offer Oracle, because I just you send me a brain dump. You send me a voice note of, like, all the different ideas you have or all the things that are coming through for you and, like, where you're stuck, and I look at it and I'm like, "Oh, it's this." And, like, I already know, like, who are the people you're gonna help? What is the thing you're gonna support them with? And, like, how are we gonna do it? And it's actually always clear, but you there might be refinement, but there's a general direction from whatever chaos is within you that is our starting point. And so then the next goal is just to take an action from there. So, like, one of the people who did my Offer Oracle recently, she came in and she had all these things. She's like, "Well, I try to make." She's Indian descent and is like a maybe first generation immigrant in the US, and she's like, "I keep trying." What I really love to do is I like to make protein dense food, like, for vegetarians and for Indians that actually tastes good, and so she's kind of experimenting in the kitchen with all, and I was like, "This is it. Like, this is your thing." And essentially through the Offer Oracle, we were like, "Okay, you have to make a cooking show, like a YouTube cooking show." And I was, like, telling her, like, what this is, and then on the call, she actually, got emotional because she was like, "This is what I would tell my mom that she needed to do," and her mom had passed away recently, and, like, I had no context of that she would tell her mom that she wanted to do a YouTube cooking show. So, that's the messy action is, like, it's something like this. It's something, and yeah, it's something like cook with me and let's kind of reclaim our culture in a different way, like in a way that's more health focused. Um, and we don't really know exactly where it's going to go, but that's the direction and that's the first messy step.
Okay. And then have you worked with clients that had a journey like yours where they were completely off in one direction of like wanting to have a travel blog and then to coaching, then to refine that? Because I mean, how you're talking about it now is like, yeah, the idea is within them, but how many of their, false starts or kind of pivots or whatever do they need to make to really find the thing that ends up doing well in terms of them really enjoying it and reaching a market the, um,
Mhm.
that they have clients for.
Yeah, and I think all the false starts are part of it because each one is bringing you somewhere. Like when you're following we'll call them false starts, but it's really like when you're following the thread from within, it's bringing you closer. So if you look at like my travel blog, that yeah, that was not what I ended up doing, but I made my website, and that's the website that I used for years and years and years, and that's what people started, like, SEO started to come in through that. I wrote my very first blog that kind of went a little viral. It was on the Turquoise Traveler, but it was about why I left my medical career. And that actually took off. So, yes, it wasn't exactly that I was going to end up doing travel blogging, but by starting the blog, the other thing that happened, because I kind of didn't have any friends after I left residency, which is totally fair because I left in the middle of the year. And so I was networking in the travel blogging course that I took. And those probably like 4 of those people ended up being my very first paying coaching clients. So it's like, yeah, it was far off, but it actually wasn't far off, because it all is part of it. It's just like I didn't
Mhm.
realize what it was leading to.
Yeah. No, I really like that. And then what's the process like post? Okay, so there's some clarity around what do we want to offer, or what do we want to start doing. So let's start talking about cooking. And for me, who creates YouTube content or helps people build creator business of like, okay, can we, like here's the products that I want to recommend as an affiliate. Like here's the cookbook I want to write. I could have a class. I could do one-on-one cooking with people. Like there's a lot of different um like potential revenue streams after you have built an audience, let's say. But like what's generally the process you run through with someone after they have a little bit of clarity of, this is the realm that I want to build a business in. you know there's building an audience, there's putting together an offer, there's delivering that offer. What does that look like, or how do you recommend somebody goes through that process?
Yeah, I probably go through it in a way that's not traditional in the same way because it's not like logical the way I go through it. I obviously understand different parts of business and I can kind of gut check things based on what I know about business. But really, what I'm having them do is remove all the ideas of like means to an end. Well, like, oh, well, first I need to do one-to-one coaching so that then I can create a product, so that then I can do that. Like I try to remove all the so that I cans and I'm trying to connect to like what do you want to do? Like how do you if there was no right way to make money, if there was no marketing strategy that was going to work better or not, how do you want to like share your gift? How do you want to one of the questions I love is like how do you want to participate in this? Like how do you want to bring this forth? Um, and we start there. Like it's like, do you want to do it in one-to-one conversations with people? Do you want to be teaching? Do you want more like one-to-many kind of vibes? Are you trying to create? Are you trying to distill information? Are you trying to research and then recommend? Like, so I have actually this like archetype system that I take people through. It's like a meditation that they do to figure out kind of the archetype, which is like how they want to play with this realm. Um, because there's no one right way to do it, but the way that's gonna work for you is the way that, like it's not that it's gonna feel good all the time, but it's just the way that feels really true for you. So, actually, for you, why did you start doing YouTube? Because you was that your very first thing that you did was just, like, starting YouTube videos?
A lot of the things up until starting this podcast was just kind of like
Mhm,
fell into. So I had a clothing
mhm,
business that didn't work out. And the thing with that is like we were getting all of our customers through Facebook ads. And I had seen some investor presentations of like other, because we were doing this in Latin America, of kind of US companies. And it's like X% of their customers came organically. And so it's like to have to pay for every single person that comes in, I was like, maybe we should start doing something here. And so we created a few YouTube videos for the clothing brand that I had, and like basic stuff like how to tie a tie, and how to, and it was like that video would get thousands of views like every weekend as people have to go to weddings and things like that. And I was like, there's something with YouTube. That business didn't work out, and really realized the company I have now was like from a couple of different startup accelerators. Learned a ton about marketing. And the thing with all digital marketing was like analytical, like finance that I did previously, but more creative. And so like I found that to be an interesting mix. And and from there, it was like, well, we can, people always would ask me for like, how do you run Facebook ads? How do you do this? And so we started first as kind of an agency and realized that not organized enough to do that. And also like didn't have like a specific expertise where I was like kind of copy and paste this for, multiple clients. And for the agency we bought a YouTube course, Sean Cannell's Video Ranking Academy. A shout out to that, and started creating YouTube videos, hoping to get clients, and then over time started making money from YouTube, and then launched a couple of different courses and kind of fell into that. But I would say that with the podcast and some of the content that I'm putting out now is more what we did previously is all pretty much YouTube search. So like somebody is looking for something, they find that information
Mhm.
and that's fine. So it's like very little, you know, vulnerability, me putting myself out there. And so it's like every once in a while someone would find one of the videos. It's like, hey, I found you on YouTube. But I didn't have to share it with my LinkedIn audience, my Instagram audience of like where everybody that knows me. It was just like very randomly
Mhm.
people would figure out what I was doing. And then now it's a bit more of a transition to taking all the stuff of years of creating YouTube content in that of like what are the stuff that I end up talking to people about all the time. So, I've had tons of one-on-one conversations about the books that I'm reading and, making decisions and taking action and doing something new. And I'm always the one that is like, I'll go move to the other side of the world, or someone tells me that I can't get a job in finance for Michigan State University. And so I was like, well, let's see if we can prove them wrong. And like not having a plan to get started. My brother was joking about this the other day. Is like, you have the ability to completely ignore the downside of whatever you wanna do, and just think about the good stuff, and we'll get started from that. And, not that I'm completely blind to all that and realize that there's gonna be a lot of bumps along the way, but at least in terms of, like, the getting started piece of it. And so now, like, wanting to share other people that are doing interesting things through the podcast, and then also creating content, kind of sharing those ideas. Um, and so like that's where the content piece comes. I haven't quite worked out like an offer or what I would want to do yet. So like that's one of
Mhm.
the things that I really wanted to, spend at least a couple of months of just let's talk to people on the podcast, let's put out content, what seems to resonate. And the
Mhm.
nice thing that I have the other stuff that we do is like that's paying the bills right now. And so this
Mhm.
doesn't have a lot of the things that we did previously was like we need money for yesterday. And with this, it's
Mhm.
like, it's nice to be able to think about just like how do we be helpful and add value and contribute. And then it's like
Mhm.
I know if that's the attitude and mindset and listening to what the audience is and plus what I end up enjoying and what resonates more with me, like it'll kind of come together in its own time. And it's nice to not have the rush and stress financially that there was with some of the other things that I was working on.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things we say in medicine is like the diagnosis will declare itself. Like so if somebody comes in and they're sick and you don't know what they're sick with, it's like, well, eventually you're gonna know because they're gonna deteriorate in some way and then the diagnosis will be clear. And that's sort of a negative way of saying it. But like for you, it's like the business will declare itself, the offer will declare itself. Like as you're taking the action. Like if you're just sitting there thinking about starting a podcast, will not declare itself. But because you're in the trenches and you're having these conversations and then putting them out there, it's like that's where everything unfolds. And it's so you just kind of take the steps and trust the unfolding, but also have your bills paid on the side.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's one of it's really tough to build something meaningful if you're really worried about that piece of it, I think. And so it's like built things that pay the bills, but then it's like,
Mhm.
kind of a um discipline of forcing myself to do versus to be like, "Oh, there's another person I get to talk to on the podcast." It was funny, like, I talked to my mom, like, a couple days ago, and she's like, "It's way different seeing you on the podcast and, like, the other videos that you do." Just because it's
Mm.
like and I was talking to somebody yesterday who was, like, very introverted, who loves talking to a camera and nobody else. And so it's like them in their room with their camera, love that. Me, it's tough to have that conversation with the inanimate object versus the excitement and energy that comes from getting to talk to another person about the journey that they've been on and how
Mm.
they can help people make changes in their life.
That's an interesting reflection. So your mom like thinks you look different or you like she can tell that it's different talking to people versus just face to camera.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I can feel it too. It's just
You
like
feel it, yeah.
I feel bad for my video editors of like, me swearing at
Mhm.
the camera because like I screwed up one of the lines and this and so it's like a
Mm.
much different attitude of like having something that's very structured and it's just like me, reading it to the teleprompter versus
Mm.
like I'm here in Costa Rica with my brother and like we're gonna have dinner or do something. It's like if you don't show up for something, it's like you just got lost talking to somebody. And it's like that's usually
Mm.
what happens, and so it's like it's clear that that's something that I really enjoy just
Mhm.
talking about random stuff with people, and so the
Yeah.
podcast is something that I think brings that out much more than just seeing the lines of text scroll on a
Mhm.
teleprompter.
Yeah, those are all the see, these are all the things I have my clients look for. It's like the glimmers, right? So you're like demonstrating the glimmers is like what do you get lost in, right? Like where do you lose track of
Mhm.
time? What like gives you energy is something else. So it sounds like you get more energy from this. And then something else is like having other people in your life asking them like when do you see me at my best? And they'll give you that reflection, like how your mom is noticing, oh, like there's more energy or like more of a glow when you're, I'm making that word up, but when
Yeah,
you're with
sure.
other people. But yeah, so it's like those are all like really clear signs that you're in the right direction.
Yeah. And what are the other examples or tools that you give to people to think through that? So for example, I've done a ton of different kind of like personality things. So like there's
Mhm.
the skills finder. I think there's one called High Five that I did. And
Mhm.
the thing that, maybe it was like this for you with medicine if you did something like that. It's like it basically took like 20 characteristics and ranked from like your most like
Mhm.
and least like. And then there were just so many things in my day to day that were on the very end of the list.
Mhm.
So it's like I'm doing very very little of my day is spent on
Mhm.
the top couple, and so much of my day
Mhm.
is spent on the lower ones that, like, I don't enjoy and I'm not as good at.
Mhm.
And so, like, those are things that I think it's helpful for somebody to have like, some of those things are kind of just eye-opening of like, "Yeah, okay, maybe this is why I'm, not having the energy and enjoyment of
Mhm.
what I'm doing right now."
Yeah. Yeah. So what I do, because I have a lot of journaling questions and things I walk my clients through, but what I the main way I do this is I have them not think so much about it and not do so much logic and really go through a process to just connect to their intuition. And so I have like meditations that I do to like guide them into their intuition, but it's dropping down out of all of the mental chatter because I we can think our way into corners and we can just question so much when it's in our mind, but it's like when you can drop in and like feel things in your body, there's a lot more clarity. I call it like it's like somatic clarity and somatic certainty that you can feel. And so that's why I have them look for things as they're living their life. You know, like they're looking for glimmers. Oh, I feel this way when I do this thing. Oh, I get more energy. And so they're kind of becoming scientists of their everyday experience of life. And there's a lot more information and data in that than there is just overthinking things in your mind. So it's almost like a version of what we've talked about of taking action, but you're kind of living your life and collecting data through that process. And then also learning how to quiet the mind and tune in. And there's a few things just to give you some more tangible something. Like, so for intuition, one of the tests I do, it's like an expansion versus contraction test. And so let's say you're trying to decide between two things, right? If you're like, should I start a podcast or I don't know, get a job somewhere else? You can test it in your body by like putting these different scenarios in there. Okay, so let me test out the starting the podcast. Let me picture actually I did this with Nomad Cruise. This is when I decided not to go on the last Nomad Cruise. I was like, okay, picture myself getting to Seattle and I'm, gonna embark on the boat and I'm on the ship. And I felt my body like crunching down, right? So it's like contraction. And then I just pictured myself I pictured my calendar just being open during that time. And I felt really expansive. And I like so expansive. Like I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is wild." And so kind of doing that as a test, yeah, that's a really helpful, tangible one to do.
I really like that. Um, yeah, and so I think, if there's any kind of like last advice that you have for somebody that maybe feels stuck right now, so doesn't necessarily have the direction of like maybe not to the point of being as burnt out or whatever as you are, but it's like, hey, I think I should be doing something different. Maybe I should, move to the other side of the world. Maybe I should start a podcast. Maybe I need to do relationship coaching for people, or who knows what the calling might be. But how would you kind of, you know, what recommendations would you have for somebody at that point to, help them, move forward and take action and eventually make some changes in their life?
Yes. So don't try to make it a big, huge deal initially. So if you're feeling stuck and you're like, something's off, I don't know exactly what it is, don't look for clarity, look for aliveness. So that's what I would ask myself. I would ask, like, where is the life? What is something I can do that makes me feel alive? Like, you're not looking for answers, you're just looking for aliveness. So for me, it's like anytime I'm dancing, I feel so alive. So I'm gonna go to a Zumba class, or I'm gonna, I don't know, go to a Latin dance social, right? But it's like connecting back to your life force. And you don't have to do that for a certain purpose other than just like you're just activating the aliveness within you. And yeah, I wouldn't overthink it. I would just be like, where is the life? What makes me feel alive? When's the last time I felt alive? And just starting to kind of crack yourself open in that way.
Okay. So in terms of, so like the dance example isn't necessarily the, like this is going to give me the answer, but I think the,
Mhm,
it's like going to Tony Robbins, for example. It's like
mhm,
it's very much of like your state and your energy, and so a lot of the stuff
mhm,
they have you jumping around and dancing, and so
mhm.
like your heart's racing and you're feeling much more expansive when you're thinking about stuff, and so that's a really
Mhm.
good example of like what are the things that make you feel the best.
Yeah.
And then are there any other things of like from that place of like, okay, I'm feeling a little bit better of like doing maybe some of the things that I forgot to do because I got so busy with,
Mhm,
med school, the residency program or things like that. But then is it kind of like a internal meditative state? Is it through conversations or courses,
mhm,
or, how would you maybe recommend somebody to kind of eventually come up with, what
mhm,
is missing or what needs to be changed?
mhm. Yeah, and I would still say, like, as you're going through, it's like we're not looking for the answer, we're just looking for directional clarity, right? We're looking for something of clarity that's enough to grasp on or act on, and so I have questions that I have my clients do that sort of get around the gremlins and ideas of, like, "This isn't possible," or, "But I'm never gonna make money doing that." Like, so there's a few things you can do. You can say, "If money wasn't an issue, what would I love to be doing?" Right? So, like, we're gonna take all of these objections out of the way just to start getting clear. So, if money wasn't an issue, what would I love to be doing? How would I love to be spending my time? If I couldn't mess it up, what would I love to be doing? If no one would be mad at me, no matter what I did, what would I do? How would I want to spend my time? So you're kind of like taking out these objections that prevent you from actually knowing what you want.
Hmm.
And you might not know this immediately, right? These are kind of contemplation questions because if you have spent so long asking, what should I do? What's expected of me? What are other people doing? How can I keep up? How can I be impressive? You you have a hard time connecting to what you want. Like that's a muscle that you haven't built in a while. And so start asking the question. And it's okay if nothing comes up at first. Keep asking. And it's through that like persistence and then keeping doing the things that make you feel alive, you'll start to have an answer that like comes through. And again, we're not even looking for an answer. We're looking for directional clarity. So another one of the kind of brainstorming techniques I have my clients do is, wouldn't it be cool if what? And then I'll focus it a little bit more. Wouldn't it be cool if I could make money by blank? Wouldn't it be cool if I could help people by blank? And I have them do that like 10 times each. So you're just starting to get the wheels turning of like what's actually in there. Because a lot of times it's like petrified and frozen because we have not asked ourselves, what do I want in so long?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good place to end. If anyone is curious of other things, the content you put out, maybe want to work with you, where's the best place for them to find more information?
Yeah, so right now I'm very active on LinkedIn. So you can come on LinkedIn, say hello to me, send me a message. I will voice note you back. That's like if you want direct contact with me, come find me on LinkedIn. And then I'm also on my Substack. So right now it's the Spiritually Ambitious Entrepreneur, but I might be changing it. So I'll give you official links so you can put it in the show notes.
Okay.
So I might be changing it to the 100K Healer. Either way, I'm very active on Substack as well. I go live on Substack every single day. So that's a place you can find me as I'm, just sharing like my behind the scenes of the journey. So those two platforms are where you can connect with me. And I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have. Just, I'm an open book. So I'd love to help.
Amazing. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. It's such a fun conversation.